Hello, hello. I'm just going to go on my phone so I can look at comments. Great. Last time on Wednesday I went live and I accidentally made it private. All right, we're live. Hi, everybody. Yes, we are. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you are. You're watching Self-Love and Quarantine Conversation Series with me, Amelia, and this is my lovely friend, Erikaa. And today we're going to be talking about self-love, sex, Tantra, what's it all about, and maybe if you behave yourselves, maybe we'll even talk about BDSM. Let's see how it goes. But Erikaa is an emotional clearing practitioner of the spiral, and she helps a lot of people free themselves from the bondage of not feeling sexually confident. And Erikaa shows creatives and entrepreneurs how to direct their sexual energy in a way that impacts their lives, both in the bedroom and in business. Ooh. So if you're here, drop us a comment if you're here with us live so we can interact with you. And if you're watching the replay, give us a hashtag replay. I was very fortunate to have met Erikaa at a Love Coaches Mingle in San Diego through a mutual, actually, I met everyone kind of for the first time that day, but I was on Antia's summit, and it was Antia's Love Coaches Mingle in San Diego, and that's where I met you, and that's where I learned all about the spiral and emotional clearing and about the work that you do. So for the people in my audience that don't know what it is that you do or your story, I know you have a really compelling story around sex, and I know that we're both really passionate about destigmatizing the negative programming that society has around sex and around normalizing pleasure and desire and intimacy. So yeah, I thought we could open up with that just so that our viewers, our listeners, our audience can get to know you a little bit and hear your story, and we'll just go from there.
Wow, what an amazing introduction. Completely different when we did a Facebook Live last year and we were just cozy.
Oh, I know.
It was a completely different experience because it was just on your phone, and now it's a whole different world, right?
I know, we were cozy in bed and we were just chit-chatting, and now it's like official.
There's like so much to talk about. Like my head is spinning with so many ideas. I'll share the story because I feel like that's the best icebreaker for those that don't know it. My invitation is to see what can you, how can you see yourself in my story? So I like to use pop culture memes, or I just like to use it as a metaphor. For me, I felt like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, where she's going down that path and she wanted to go. And it was kind of like, that was a metaphor of my journey through sexuality. And I was on this path meeting all these different characters. And, like when we get to see the wizard, there's a lot behind the red curtain. And for me, that was like sexuality, and that was a taboo. And for me, it was like, there was like good characters and there was evil villains in my whole storyline. And so I like to just present sexuality as this way. Like there's going to be, good characters and bad characters, like ex-lovers and partners that are going to like rock your world. And then there's going to be not so nice guys. And in my situation, I was sexually abused by my stepdad, who was a Freemason. So I was experiencing sexuality on a very witchy energy, which kind of like relates to the whole Beltane thing. And there was voodoo and there was like black magic, and I was hypnotized. And so I was not only sexually repressed, it affected every area of my life: communication, shyness, my relationship with men, relationship with everything. And it affected me on all levels. And so he was the first evil villain on my story. And so I saw sex as dangerous and deadly, especially because I was sexually abused next to a gun, next to my mother's bed. So for me, that's how I viewed sexuality, was with like, you know, is deadly and dangerous. So when I was with my partners, I wasn't fully there. It felt like I had to go to a whole different mindset in my mind. I had to go escape, and I had to, you know, use different ways of like coping. And for me, it was just like kind of like pulling up the blankets, and there was no pleasure. There was a lot of tightness.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't know what home was. And when I say home, it's really like home within your body, home within how you feel with pleasure, home with your relationship to sexuality. So that's what I mean by, you know, coming home to yourself.
Yeah.
And so eventually, you know, like I eventually got into BDSM, dominatrix work, and, you know, escorting Tantra. And I thought it was going to be easier. It actually was not as easy as it seems. And there was like, you know, relationship, sex, and money. And I felt dirty and shameful. And eventually, you know, things changed. Like I started coming back home when I found a sex
Your
positive
body.
community.
Mm.
And I discovered, wow, there's actually people with integrity, people that love sexuality, people that are here for sexual liberation. And I said, I want to experience that. And so I discovered these amazing sex educators, and I can go deep into a whole different story, which would be opening up a whole different portal. Maybe we'll go into it, but that's my story in a nutshell. And so the reason I bring Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz is, for me, I was really like, you know, this wanting to escape, wanting to find the shortcuts, but I had to go through the different levels and really build a relationship with myself. And now I'm home to myself. And so that's my invitation, is to rediscover sexuality from a place of like lightness, and know that there is magic on the other side once you start to finally heal. And that's my
Yeah.
story.
Well, thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably and so authentically. And it really, for those of you watching, it really is just a testament to the work that you've done to be able to share that story so openly. It really shows that you've gone from, okay, sex is deadly and dangerous, and I don't know how to be in my body. When I'm in those kind of relationships, I just check out, to finding this community of sex positivity, well, to the work that you've been doing, that you did, and then finding a sex positive community, and then having this liberation. And now this is the work that you do, and you've been there. It's, you know, one of my mentors, Marsha Weeder, hey Marsha, she says, you know, been to hell and back, lived to tell about it, and now I teach people how to do the same. You know, people who are going through hell, I help people go through that. And your story, your strength, your knowledge is one of the biggest reasons why I wanted you on here with me for this conversation, because, you know, a lot of us, myself included, have history of sexual abuse. And even if it's not like literal sexual abuse, like molestation or rape, I feel our society has been sexually abused from, like, just from the perspectives that we have about it. It's like models, Victoria's Secret models, and all these like in a way we're oversexed yet undersexed at the same time, because then we get shamed for desiring it. It's like we're told we should want it, we told we should be sexy, but not too much. And it's like there are these unspoken rules and unspoken and spoken things, and then, you know, bring religion into the mix, and then like forget about, like, our relationship as a society with sex is so fractured, you know. And you and I grew up with also fractured relationships with sex. So from your perspective, you know, and for like thinking of people listening who, you know, some of you listening may just be starting your sexual healing journey, or maybe you haven't even started, but you know that that's something that you need to do. Or maybe you're a sex expert and then you just want to go even deeper. So thinking that we have all kinds of people listening, like how do we reprogram, or how do we shift the conversation around sex into a more positive place?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the first thing is just being aware of when you feel uncomfortable. And so the first thing that comes to my mind is I was working with a woman who would start laughing when it came to sexuality. And yeah, I get that there can be humor, but I can tell when someone's laughing from a place of uncomfortability. So this is like one of the first common things is like, oh my God, that's just so funny. It's really, there's a discomfort. And why do you feel discomfort? Because you were told that it's wrong to think about it, or to be sexual or be slutty. For women, one of the biggest myths is to overcome that whole idea of being a slut. And the more that I'm around sex educators and tantrikas and going down the rabbit hole, I actually embrace it. I think it's powerful when a woman embraces her sexuality where it's healthy and it's coming from choice instead of escapism. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And there's so much, like, this is so your zone, your genius zone. And so there's so many gems that you just dropped. So I just want to like pull some of them out, like awareness, right? Awareness is probably 100% of the time the first step, right? So even looking at the title of this video, for example, like sex, Tantra, maybe BDSM, it's like, start being aware of what are your thoughts and feelings around it, right? Start being aware of what your programming was, maybe thinking, how was sex talked about when you were growing up? Or how did your experiences kind of tell you, how did your experience dictate what your narrative around sex is? So first being aware of it, and then realizing like, okay, do I want that to be my narrative or not, right? And I really love what the other piece you said about like, be whatever you want to be sexually, right? Like, because we hear the word slut and we automatically think bad, but it's like, if slut comes from choice, then that's your choice, that's your right. And if you're home in your body in that archetype, then that's your choice, right? You said, how did you say it? You said come from choice instead of from
escapism.
From escapism. Yes.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
One of the things I learned is people have sex for multiple reasons. It's procreation, recreation. Recreation is really escapism, and then there's pleasure, and then there's healing.
Ooh. Yeah, let's go into, let's define them a little bit for us.
Sorry, the internet.
Okay. Oh, I said, can we go into each one? So for procreation, I think, so that's obvious.
So procreation is, it's kind of like the Victorian 1920s, I want to have sex for marriage and kids, which is the old model. There's nothing wrong with wanting a family. There's nothing wrong, but you're coming from, it's kind of scarcity mindset, right? It's like, this is what keeping up with what everyone wants. And I think it's beautiful to want a family. I think it's beautiful to desire kids. But if you're coming from like, I need, because that's the expectation, by the time I'm 25, I should have this many kids, I should have a job, right? That's coming from procreation. Shadow side. Like, there's nothing wrong with wanting a family, but if you're coming from the scarcity, that's the shadow side. That's coming from a very lack mentality.
Or like even from like a have to, or like this is what I'm supposed to do, or a should. Like anytime something's coming from a should or from a have to, or what society tells me. And like, I love how you said it, because even the way you said it, like coming from choice, like I felt that in my body, like I'm choosing this. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with sex for procreation, but it's like, are you doing it like I'm a baby maker to society and that's all I'm worth? Or is it like from choice, like, no, I want to have children and this is why I want to do it? So procreation and then recreation. I love what you said about that. That's the escapism. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. This one is recreation. I used to be a preschool teacher, so I used to study like how children would play. And recreation is where they're just doing it to release energy. They're just, I had a conversation in a Facebook group where this woman basically said, I just need to get laid because I'm having a hard day. It's like I am stressed. So when I did Tantra work, or when I was, one of the common things that I would ask men is, why are you here? Like, why do you need this? I'm stressed. I'm stressed. It's been a hard day, right? That's recreation. Again, it's also coming from scarcity, lack, and it's like you're not creative. It's almost the same thing as, well, I'm bored.
Or like when people snack, how people have been like in quarantine. And I think what we're talking about with recreation is so relevant to the current landscape that we're in, being in quarantine, right? So it's like snacking all day, like I'm not even hungry, I'm just bored, right? And the other day on Wind Down Wednesday, Felix and I were talking about that meme that was like, okay, like first date, everyone's gonna have sex on the first date once we get out of quarantine, the single people at least. And a lot of people are like talking about how they're really horny and they just want to have sex and they just can't like, and I was just like, wow, it really showed me how many people were having recreational sex. I mean, I didn't have that terminology until you just taught it to us, but yeah, it's like, I don't see myself doing that because I'm not a recreational sex person. And so how do we not make that wrong? Like, what do we do about that? Do you think recreational sex is okay, is healthy, is like,
I
what's
think
your
it's
stance
okay.
on that?
I think it's okay to desire it. I think we're all like creatures of, we're hedonistic creatures. We all desire pleasure, but we also avoid pain. If you're seeking pleasure to avoid pain, then that's coming from a shadow side. If you're seeking this from like, hey, this is what I want, and it's a choice that I make, that's coming from neutrality. You trust yourself. You're like, I desire this and I deserve this. But if you're coming from, I'm stressed, I'm having a bad day, I am overwhelmed, then that energy is lingering into the other person. So the other person is going to also feel your stress. Because like it just shows up on a micro level, like, angry sex, or, like you could feel that when they're not in their head. And so if you're having sex, that person's going through some kind of subconscious memory, and they're just releasing that onto the other person. So then the person's going to feel that heaviness.
Ooh, that's so good. I love that. I really love how you frame that. Like, it's wanting, again, just like with procreational sex, wanting it is not good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just your choice. But have that awareness to like, is this coming from choice, or is this coming from scarcity or shadow, right? And with recreational, it's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with wanting sex for the pleasure of it, but if you're doing it to avoid pain, that's where it gets a little, especially if you're doing it as a habit, that can then become like an addiction. And addictions have lots of negative impacts. And I really love how you brought in the piece of now you're bringing that to the other person, because I think at that point it becomes irresponsible then, because now there was this term that I learned a few years ago from a sex therapist where it's like, now it just becomes two people masturbating with each other's bodies, and it's like, or one person masturbating with another person's body if that person's being passive. And I think tell me what you think about this, but I think we're conditioned to think that that's the norm, or like that's healthy, or that's okay, when there's a whole other possibility of way better sex and way better like connection than to just be two people masturbating with each other's bodies, or like marathon to orgasm, you know what I mean? Or it's like, oh, I'm done, all right, let's do you now. And it's like, what are we doing, each other's nails? Like, yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with it's the same thing like with consuming like too much Netflix. I'm not gonna say that I don't. I think that again, it's really about your intention. And so if you're desiring to do something because it's like, I'm just trying to escape, or you're just coming from a bad day, like it's not really going to solve anything. It's just going to create more of that habit.
And it'll just be compounding. Like your problems will still meet you at the end of it all. And if you keep trying to kick the can down the road, then you're not actually dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
So then I love the other two, because there were two more, right? It was, then there's for healing and pleasure, right? So let's talk a little bit about Which one should we talk about first?
Well,
Pleasure.
pleasure is pretty much the opposite of recreation. It's where you're excited. You're having this excitement from fun, where you're listening to a Sade song and you're just coming from a creative, joyful place. And you're like, oh my God, I'm just excited to play. It's a playful energy. And for me, pleasure is something that you don't even need a partner for. Like pleasure is your birthright. Pleasure is accessible anywhere. It's not just with your partner. Pleasure is like with yourself, with your food, with your breath. I know a lot of people are touch deprived right now. They're like, you can dance, you can hug yourself, there's so many things you can do for yourself. And this is an opportunity to discover other ways of pleasure, because that's what we think as society is, oh, well, I need concentrated sex, like penis to vagina. But there's other aspects of pleasure, and it's basically in the same realm as sex magic. Pleasure is in the same realm as sex magic, when you're like, feel your sexual energy and feel your joy and move it. And that's when you can transmute it into like, dancing, art, creating a Facebook Live. That's pleasure. And out of pleasure comes from passion.
I love that. And you can, like, back to from choice, you can choose to do that with a partner or partners, whatever your thing is, or not. And pleasure, what I'm hearing is like pleasure is available to you. And if we're coming from that recreation escapism place, we're just kicking the can down the road, and we're not actually dealing with our stuff.
Yeah.
But coming from pleasure, you can actually transmute that, right? And I'm so glad you brought up the concentrated sex thing, because I think, like, when it comes to like, well, what is sex? Like sex can be in holding hands, right? Like there's so much sex there. If you want to look at it that way, there's so much pleasure and desire there, and connection, right? So let's talk a little bit about so for healing, that sounds so good. How do we do that?
Sexual healing is basically Tantra.
Oh, good. So we're going right into it. So great.
Yeah. Sexual healing is basically Tantra. And this idea of this meme comes to my head of a spiritual awakening. Sometimes we think of a spiritual awakening like, oh, I'm going to drink kombucha and it's, like my chakras are going to align and it's going to be this amazing spiritual awakening, but it's actually a lot messier. There's more tears. There's more.
Oh yeah. I think I know what you mean.
That's pretty much the meme of sexual healing. And, for me, it's really about going into the deep conversations that you're not having, the difficult conversations. What are you avoiding? What are you hiding? What are you not being honest about? That's when you're able to have that conversation with your partner. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And is it purely just about sex that you ask those questions, or is it just like before you're even having sex, you just kind of sit and have this conversation? Like, how does that look like in practice?
Well, with a partner, and this is something I'm practicing in my relationships, is, the throat is so connected to our pussy, right? Like if we're
your
not
larynx actually looks like a pussy.
It does. If you Google, it looks like the same anatomy. And
it's the same thing, y'all.
And the thing is, if you feel like if you're not feeling present in your body, it's because there's something that you haven't been saying. And that's what Tantra is. Tantra is expansion to liberate. You're expanding consciousness, and consciousness is a fancy word for awareness. And to be aware is to, like, if there's something in the back of your mind, it's because you're lying about something. And again, you do that by letting go of what? Letting go of your truth, what you're not saying, your desires, your boundaries. And so the more that you let go, the more that you unpack that, there's going to be room for presence. There's going to be room. So when you're with each other, it's like, there's nothing in the background. There's no background tape. There's, nothing behind the red curtain. It's just you and your partner. And that's sexual healing. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So tell us a little bit more about, well, let me just check comments here. Hi, Diana. Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Summer. Hi, Chris. Hi, Sylvia. Hi, Annette. Hi, Dubs. Oh my gosh, there's so many people here. Amazing. Hi, Jake. Okay, no, there are no questions here. I think maybe people are just taking notes because you're just dropping gems like crazy. I love it. I love it. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about Tantra. I know you do a lot of work with Tantra as well as BDSM. And I know like we only have a few minutes left, but let's talk a little bit about that because I feel, am I getting this right, that those can be tools that you can use for sexual healing?
Those are tools that you can use. And actually, I recommend a book that I've been using
Okay.
for just authenticity. And the book is Getting Real. That's a good
Okay.
book.
Here, I'll type it in here. Who do you know who it's by?
I literally have it. It's
That's
by
okay.
Susan Campbell.
Okay. I'll put it in here. Okay, so yeah, tell us about the book. So yeah, how do we use Tantra and
Well,
tools?
Tantra is really a practice. It's a practice of, I mean, the magical part, like the yummy part, is the yab yum. And it's a position where if you're the girl, the guy would basically be sitting in front and he would cross-legged. And then the woman would sit over and kind of, hook her legs over him. And he would just be holding her. And the intention is like your chakras will align. And so when you're together, the intention is to breathe together. So when you're breathing together, you don't want to match each other's breath. So if you're noticing one partner is breathing, you want to match it. And, eye gaze, looking into their left eye. And after like 10 minutes, there will be a feeling of like connection. You might think the same thing. You might just feel more vulnerable. So that's another practice to do. And I do a thing where I basically tap their leg if I notice that they're not present. So if I feel like disconnected, I would
Like if
tap
are
on
you
their
working with a partner or when
yeah.
you're okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
so you can tap on their shoulder, and that's just my own way that I do it. If I feel like they're not present, tap on them. Maybe they're going somewhere else, and it's basically like a meditation with your partner. And you can go deeper. You can later add like chanting, oming, sounding, and then it just gets really invigorated. And when you do it a lot, you're gonna have the tantra shivers. So after a while that you're lovemaking, your whole body will literally feel like like it will feel like there's a lot of sensation outside. Your hands will tingle, your feet will tingle. That's how you know you're doing it right. You won't have the monkey mind. You'll feel like there's zero mind and a lot of orgasm.
And just a lot of just presence with, and even just hearing you think about it, talk about it, it's just like, how often do we not connect? Too often. And tell me what you think about this. I feel like a lot of people are not having as good sex as they like to make it seem that they're having, because whenever I've ever gotten really real with someone, like one-on-one, to talk about it, like the truth comes out. And I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying about we're checking out, or we have that monkey mind because there's something we're not saying, or you said something like there's like a lie or a secret that we're not saying or something like that. And I just feel like we need to have more conversations like this where you just get real and get really connected. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
I think it's really about, again, self-awareness. Like it's not only just with your partner, it's also with your family, your friends, your relationships. Like where are you holding back in? And this relates to like how it shows up in the bedroom. Like if you're really submissive, where else are you submissive? Where else are you dominant? Where else are you like, and this is where you learn how to play into that role of like, if you're submissive, try being the dominant. If you're noticing that you're more like, I'm just going to be on the bottom, I'm just going to let him lead, you can also lead. Like it's also possible that girls, like women, you can also say, this is my idea and I want to lead it this way. You know, it's not just about the masculine. It's also, hey, how can I also access my own masculine?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is like a gargantuan topic that we can talk for literally hours about. But let me try to bottom line it and then fill in any gaps if I missed it. So really what we've been talking about is there's a lot of disempowering programming out there and conditioning out there around sex and sexuality, whether you're a man, woman, non-binary. I just think in general, our society, most societies, especially Western societies, have really negative programming and conditioning around sex. And so what we've really been talking about is being aware of that, being aware of how our experiences have impacted us without judgment, right? I don't know that we said that explicitly, but if we're talking about self-love and healing, we want to have that awareness without judgment, and then just start to take those steps in the right direction. And I think what really helped you was, finding a sex positive community, right? And definitely for me too, finding sex positive, body positive communities where people do talk openly about it, because yeah, maybe your household will never be a sex positive community. So it's not about trying to change other people, but it's about finding the people that can help you open up and do this kind of work. And I know that you do this kind of work with people. So what I would love for you to share how people can find your work and get connected with you, but also maybe, a few, small next steps that people can take, because if wherever they are on their journey, some next steps that they can take to head in the right direction. Do you have some ideas for us?
That's a really good question. I would say the next few steps is having a tantric relationship with yourself. Take yourself on a tantra date, and this is again inspired by another one of my favorite books. It's called Pussy. So if you're a woman,
this book?
Yeah, that one.
Okay, I'm gonna write that.
And men can do this too. And it's really about really coming home to yourself. Like that's the whole theme. And, go buy yourself flowers. Imagine that your favorite person is coming over, like whatever your maybe favorite celebrity, even if you're single, just allow yourself to fantasize. Like it's okay to fantasize. This is one of the things I actually didn't do, is I would tell myself I have to wait till the man, and like letting go of that perfection, letting go of control, and just be like, yeah, let me just allow myself to fantasize. And then, buy your favorite flowers, your favorite, essential oils, and cook for yourself. Get excited about taking yourself on a date, and then get in front of a mirror and start masturbating, self-pleasuring in front of the mirror, and really allow yourself to be seen. And if you cry, that's okay, because Monique Darling, who's a world famous cuddle party facilitator, says she says tears are a form of orgasm. So even if you feel like maybe you're thinking there's something wrong with tears, actually tears are a form of release, and you're releasing. And it, of course, we can go into the nerdy side that it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which just relates to, surrender.
Yeah. And if you're watching and you're thinking like, whoa, what did she say? Go slow. You don't strip down and go straight for the kill, because I don't think that's really what a tantra date would be, unless that's your thing. And I think just go back to like what Erikaa, what you said, come from choice and not from scarcity or not from escapism. Like if you're thinking, okay, I want a mirror and just go for it. Like, no, like cook yourself a meal or run yourself a bubble bath, like make it really slow and pleasurable, and ask yourself first. Maybe, how like when we go on a date with a lover or a partner, we plan it, right? Oh, we're going to go here and we're going to go do this. So maybe before you take yourself on the date, plan it out. Like, I'm going to run a bubble bath with my favorite Epsom salts and lavender oil, and I'm going to cook this meal. It's my favorite meal, and I'm actually going to buy my favorite, and I'm going to splurge on my favorite ingredients, you know, and then I'm going to turn on my, for me, it's 90s R&B, girl. Turn on my 90s R&B, look in front of the mirror, and like, you know, you don't have to just rush for it, or and if you're scared, whatever feelings come up, right? It's like, that's part of the healing, is what I'm hearing you say, that it's all okay. And that it's a journey, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
And go super, super slow. Well, you know, Tantra is the art of slow. And if you feel like you want to go fast, it's like there's a bit of impatience. So you're just making love to time, you know, make love to the slowness. Take your clothes off super slow. Eat your food super slow. I did a video where I talked about like where I was just eating. And surprisingly, I don't know if you saw the video where I'm just eating slowly.
I did. It was good.
I got mostly single mothers commenting. I got more messages from single mothers than guys on that video. And that was because they don't know how to slow down. And then of course, that's a really good practice. If you're a single mother, like learn how to make love to your food.
Yeah, we'll make love to it all. I mean, it's all here. Life is all around us.
I'm still drinking.
Well, we didn't really get to talk too much about BDSM today, which is why I didn't promise that we'd get to talk about it. But maybe we'll do another part 2 if you're open, Erikaa, to talk about that another time. But if people want to follow you, what's the best way to find out more about your work and what you do?
Well, they can go to my website, erikaabriones.com, ERIKAABRIONES.com. I will be adding a free Tantra PDF soon, so watch out for when I drop that. And of course, Instagram, Facebook, Instagram, Erikaa Briones, same thing. And that's about it.
Well, thank you so much. I had so much fun learning from you, talking to you about it. And yeah, maybe we'll do part 2 BDS. Now that we've warmed up the audience, we can go maybe straight into some of the more edgier stuff next time. But thank you so much. You are so talented and wise, and I'm so grateful that our paths crossed and that I was able to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
And to all of you watching, thank you so much for sticking with us. As you know, Wind Down Wednesdays with me and Felix is every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And I have other conversations coming up, so just keep it locked right here on Facebook. I'll be scheduling them all. So I'll be scheduling Wind Down Wednesday, and I have another conversation next Friday. And then I'll, of course, let you know when Erikaa and I come back for part 2. To go a little bit deeper. And so if for part 2, like, ask your questions too, so that we can make sure to cover it, or whatever discoveries that you might be having. But thank you so much, Erikaa, for taking the time out to be with us today. And thank you everyone for watching, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.